The room was silent as Oprah walked in, the echo of her heels tapping against the polished floor. A dozen pairs of eyes turned toward her, some warm, some indifferent, and a few that made no effort to hide their displeasure. She had seen those looks before. She had learned, over time, to ignore them. She adjusted the papers in her hands and cleared her throat. Good afternoon. I'm here to discuss the new programming proposal. I believe we have an opportunity to create something truly impactful. The man sitting at the head of the table leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He was older, his silver hair neatly combed, his suit impeccable. He had power. Oprah knew that much, and he did not seem thrilled to see her here. Miss Winfrey, he said, his voice slow and measured. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we are looking for someone with a bit more experience. Someone with the right image for this kind of project. Oprah felt the weight of the words, the unspoken message beneath them. She had the experience. She had worked for years to get to this very moment, but she understood what he meant by right image. I assure you, my experience speaks for itself, she replied, forcing a smile. I've researched this thoroughly, and I believe it could change the landscape of media. Representation matters. A woman at the other end of the table shifted uncomfortably. We're not saying your ideas aren't good. They are. But perhaps they would be more suited to a different platform. Something that fits your background more appropriately. A different platform. Oprah knew exactly what that meant. A smaller one. A less visible one. Something that wouldn't disrupt the carefully curated image this company wanted to project. She inhaled deeply, keeping her composure. What background would that be? She asked, her voice even. The room went still. The man at the head of the table studied her, perhaps weighing whether to be honest or to backpedal. We have to consider what our audience expects, he finally said. Certain demographics respond better to familiar faces. It's just business, Miss Winfrey. Business? Oprah repeated, her eyes narrowing. Let me ask you this. How do you define familiar? Because if all you ever show your audience is the same kind of face, how will they ever be familiar with anything else? A younger executive sitting near the middle of the table cleared his throat. Miss Winfrey, I don't think anyone here is questioning your talent or your ideas. It's just about marketability. We have to be strategic in our choices. Marketability? Oprah repeated, her voice sharp. Let me tell you what's marketable. Stories that resonate with people. Authenticity. Representation. People want to see themselves reflected in the media they consume. Are you saying audiences don't deserve that? Another man, younger than the one at the head of the table but just as confident, leaned forward. Look, Miss Winfrey, I'll be honest with you. It's not about whether or not your idea is good. It's about the risk. You have to understand that our advertisers, our sponsors, they expect a certain image. If we take a gamble and it doesn't work, we lose money. That's the reality. Oprah's fingers tightened around the papers in her hands. And what if it does work? What if I prove you wrong? Would you be willing to take that chance? Or are you too afraid to see the world change? A long silence followed. No one wanted to answer. No one wanted to admit that they were part of the problem. Miss Winfrey, the older man finally said, sighing, I admire your passion. I really do. But we have to look at the bigger picture here. Our company has a legacy. We have to be careful about the steps we take. Oprah nodded slowly, then placed her papers on the table. I understand, she said. You have a legacy to protect, but I have a future to build, and I won't let anyone stop me. She stood a little straighter, looking directly at him. Then let me ask you, when will the audience be ready? When will people like me be seen as familiar enough? Because if no one opens the door, how can anything change? The tension in the room was thick. No one answered her. They didn't have to. The decision had already been made before she even walked in. But here's the thing about Oprah Winfrey. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't accept limits set by others. She had faced rejection before, and she had learned something crucial. She was the one who defined her worth, not them. Oprah gathered her papers, her heart pounding, but her resolve stronger than ever. Thank you for your time, she said. I'll take my ideas elsewhere, and when they succeed, you'll wish you had listened. She turned and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. They may not have believed in her, but she believed in herself, and that was enough. Wait a minute. If you do not subscribe, you will be supporting racism. You don't want that, do you? The reality is, discrimination still exists. Doors are still closed. Opportunities are still denied. But change happens when people refuse to accept the limitations imposed upon them. It happens when voices rise, when stories are told, and when people refuse to be silenced. Oprah Winfrey did not stop that day. She did not shrink herself to fit someone else's idea of where she belonged. She found another way, built her own path, and became a force that no one could ignore. And that is why her story is not just about her. It is about every person who has ever been told they do not belong. Every person who has been denied an opportunity because of the color of their skin. Every person who has had to fight twice as hard to get half as far. The question is, what side of history will you be on? Will you support those who break barriers, who challenge the status quo? Or will you sit silently while discrimination continues? If you believe in equality, in opportunity, in fairness, then take action. Share this story. Speak up when you see injustice. And most importantly, subscribe, because silence helps no one, and every voice matters.